Jesus' words were like a vow, making Ethan feel an unexpected surge of strength within him. Though he did not fully understand the meaning of what Jesus said, a part of him knew that this was his chance to truly change not just his own life, but the lives of others as well. When Ethan returned to the physical world, the first feeling he experienced was the deep transformation within himself. Everything around him seemed clearer, more vivid. The streets, the neighborhoods, the people he had once passed by daily now appeared in a new light, as if everything was being illuminated by a pure, radiant glow that he had never noticed before. But the most surreal thing was that he could sense the spirits around him, those who were seeking help. These souls weren't like the dark, haunting ghosts he had once imagined. They were people who had not yet moved on, those still trapped in pain and loneliness, searching for peace. Ethan no longer felt fear. He now felt a profound connection to the world around him, and it didn't make him anxious. Instead, it brought a peace he had never known before. He understood that he no longer faced loneliness, he faced the spirits searching for release. Without the sense of hopelessness, Ethan knew he had to do something. He became a sharer, a guide. With every spirit he encountered, he listened, offering them the help they needed. He was no longer the man filled with wounds and despair. He had become someone who offered hope to those drowning in their own suffering, just as he once had. He didn't just help with words, he helped with his presence. Every time he encountered one of these souls, he felt as if he was connecting with a realm beyond this world, one he had never understood until his special journey. He had become a bridge between wandering souls and the physical world, where pain and wounds could be healed. With every step, every conversation, Ethan felt like he was fulfilling the great mission that Jesus had entrusted to him. He was no longer seeking peace for himself, he was transmitting that peace to the spirits, helping them find their way back to the light. He was no longer bound by the pain of his past, instead, he carried a profound belief in the healing power of love and forgiveness. Ethan gradually realized that life was not a straight path, not a clear destination, but a long journey full of challenges. With every trial, every sorrow he overcame, he felt stronger and more resilient. He began to understand that these struggles were not meaningless obstacles but valuable lessons that helped him grow and mature. Throughout this process, his connection with Jesus became deeper than ever. He felt that Jesus never abandoned him, and that he was always by his side, even when he felt weak and unable to continue. Ethan no longer felt alone, no longer overwhelmed by the darkness of despair. He knew that no matter how harsh or difficult life could get, he always had the light of Jesus guiding him, an invisible source of strength that helped him stay steady and move forward. Every time he faced hardships, he felt the comfort of that light, ensuring he would never give up. He not only found peace within his heart but also realized that he could become the light for others who were lost in the darkness. Finally, Ethan realized that passing was not a tragic end but a part of the eternal journey. The transition from the material world to the spiritual realm was simply the next step in an endless cycle. People like him, those who have faced and overcome the darkness of life, will always find the path leading to the light, a light that never fades. They will forever exist in tranquility, in harmony with the universe and with themselves. Thank you all for following this deeply emotional story. It is the journey of a woman who endured unimaginable pain and feelings of abandonment, to the point of deciding to end her life. But in her darkest moment, she saw beings resembling Jesus, who brought her comfort and hope. This story serves as a reminder that even though life may lead us into dark places, there is always a spark of hope waiting for us, a loving presence that helps us overcome every struggle. We hope this story can be a source of encouragement for those feeling alone and desperate, guiding them toward peace in their hearts. Thank you for listening and sharing this story. Ethan couldn't find words. He just stood there, in his mother's embrace, feeling every word she said as a healing balm, soothing all the pain he had carried for so many years. He felt her forgiveness and her unconditional love. Finally, he understood that, despite the challenges and suffering life had brought, love never truly fades. He whispered, "Mom, I miss you so much. I'm sorry I couldn't do better, I was wrong." His mother gently shook her head, her voice like a gentle breeze passing through. "You don't need to apologize, my dear. I know you did your best. Now, you are free, and I just want you to feel peace." Ethan felt a gentle wave enveloping his soul. Every word from his mother was a profound healing, as if all the pain of the past was fading away, making room for peace and understanding. He understood that even though his mother was gone, her love would remain forever in his heart, regardless of time and space. Ethan stood there, in his mother's embrace, feeling every breath of warmth and gentleness from her, as if all the burdens in his heart had been lifted. The guilt, the feelings of wrongness that he had carried throughout his life, slowly faded away like morning mist under the bright light of day. Every word his mother spoke, every act of love she showed, felt like a magical remedy, healing the deepest wounds in his soul. He felt an absolute peace, a peace he had never experienced before. In that moment, he thought he had found the answers to life, that love was everything, and that it was the key that would free him from all suffering. Jesus took Ethan's hand, and in that instant, a sense of warmth and safety flooded Ethan's heart. He looked at Jesus, and the tenderness in his gaze was matched by a quiet but firm resolve. "You will not stay here forever," Jesus said, his voice resonating as if it came from the deepest corners of the universe, strong yet gentle. "Your life is not over. You still have a mission to fulfill." Ethan felt a shock ripple through his chest. He looked at Jesus, stunned and unable to comprehend. "But I have found peace here, my mother is here, and I have nothing else to search for," he said, his voice trembling, almost in disbelief at what he had just heard. Jesus smiled gently. The calmness and wisdom in his gaze made Ethan feel like he was standing before a great truth that he had never fully understood. "You have found peace, yes. But the peace you have found is not only for you. You must return, to share this light and love with the world. Your mission is not complete, and your life still has much to be done." Ethan felt a strong pull from Jesus, a gravitational force he could not resist. He understood that the peace he had just experienced was only a part of a much greater journey. There was a mission he had to fulfill, a reason for him to return and face the world. Jesus looked deeply into Ethan's eyes, his gaze containing the vastness of the universe, shimmering with invisible lights, full of love and understanding. Slowly, he began to speak, his voice gentle yet powerful, echoing like the breath of nature, of the earth and sky. "You have endured suffering, challenges that many cannot even imagine. You once thought that you had nothing left to live for, and you chose to give it all up. But in that moment, you saw the light, and you found yourself." Ethan stood there, listening to every word of Jesus. He felt a deep stillness in his heart, as if all the worry and fear he had carried throughout his life were slowly fading away. Jesus continued, the light surrounding him growing brighter, and every word he spoke seemed like a prophecy. "You will be given a special opportunity. You will return to the earthly world, but not to live your life as before. You are no longer the person you once were, Ethan. Your life has been reborn, and now, you will carry with you the understanding and enlightenment you have received here. What you have experienced will become your strength, so that you may help those who are suffering, just as you once did." Ethan felt a strange sensation in his heart. He looked at Jesus, unsure of how to react. "But I don't know what to do. I'm just an ordinary person, Lord. How can I help others when I couldn't even save myself?" His voice faltered with worry and confusion. Jesus smiled warmly and gently, as though he understood all the doubts in Ethan's mind. "You do not need to be perfect, Ethan. Your wounds, the pain you have endured, are exactly what will help you connect with others. You will not do this alone. You will always have my presence beside you, guiding you, showing you the right path. You only need to trust in the light within you and bring it to those around you." The atmosphere around them was filled with a profound stillness, yet there was an intense, indescribable vitality within it. The forest itself seemed to breathe, as if it held the heartbeat of an unseen life force. Tiny, glowing creatures fluttered between the branches, creating a magical display, as if time itself had stopped in this place. Beams of light filtered through the leaves, casting beautiful patterns on the ground, making everything feel both mystical and eternally fresh. "Lord, where is this?" Ethan asked, his voice filled with astonishment and disbelief. He couldn't comprehend where he was, as everything around him felt so alien and unlike anything he had ever known. The light, the trees, and the air were so pure that it felt like he had stepped into another world, a place beyond human understanding. Jesus smiled, his gaze both gentle and profound. This is where new life begins, a realm of eternal harmony. You don't need to understand everything right now, but you will feel your connection with everything around you, and when you do, you will find your path. This is where you will understand the true nature of life and passing. What you see here is not a myth, but things that exist beyond your understanding, Jesus replied, his voice gentle yet filled with infinite wisdom. Ethan listened to his words, feeling an unprecedented sense of calm. He no longer felt afraid, nor did he feel anxious. Everything around him seemed to blend together, and with each step, he felt a deeper connection with the world around him. The shimmering lights continued to dance, creating an ethereal and peaceful atmosphere. They walked down winding paths surrounded by glowing trees. These paths were unlike any earthly roads Ethan had known. There was no clear endpoint, only an endless continuation of light and serenity. Jesus guided him to a vast area where many souls gathered. But these souls were not like the ghosts he had heard of in stories. They did not have the terrifying or gloomy aura he had imagined. Instead, they radiated a gentle, warm light. These souls stood there, silent, but their eyes reflected complete peace and understanding. They no longer bore the weight of suffering, fear, or regret, only a profound sense of tranquility and absolute freedom. Each soul was an individual, yet all of them were connected in an invisible bond, as if they were all part of the greater universe. Ethan felt that these were souls who had overcome trials, who had found enlightenment along their journeys. A wise-looking elderly man stood in the center of the gathering of souls, his surrounding light shining as bright as the sun. Though his face looked tired, his eyes were filled with wisdom and serenity. He smiled at Ethan and nodded. Without speaking a word, Ethan understood that this soul had found the path to freedom and had completed the journey of searching for the meaning of life. These souls, as you will see, are not those who are punished. They are those who have conquered themselves, overcome pain and fear, and they have found the release, Jesus explained, his gaze warm as he looked at Ethan. They have surpassed great challenges in their lives and ultimately attained the enlightenment and peace that all can achieve if they open their hearts. Ethan looked at these souls and felt a deep sense of respect. These were not just the deceased, they were individuals who had lived lives full of meaning and had found their rest in the vastness of the universe. One day, as Ethan stood among the souls, feeling the peace surrounding him, he suddenly felt a warm and familiar energy. A sense of familiarity flooded his heart, as if someone was approaching him. Out of the crowd of souls, a familiar figure appeared. He couldn't believe his eyes. It was his mother, who had passed away many years ago. His mother stepped forward, the light surrounding her gentle and warm, like a soft, comforting blanket. Her hair was long and fell lightly over her shoulders, and her face was radiant, smiling with no wrinkles, just like the days when she was alive. Ethan stood frozen, unsure of what to do. He looked at her, feeling a strange sense of disorientation, but at the same time, his heart was overwhelmed with happiness and emotion. His mother walked up to him, not saying a word, just smiling and wrapping her arms around him tightly. The sensation of her warm, steady hands made Ethan's heart melt. He closed his eyes, unable to hold back his tears. The tears that fell down his cheeks were not from pain but from a joy, a release he had never felt before. "My son," his mother said, her voice sweet and full of love. "You have walked a long and painful road. But now, you have found peace in your heart, just as I always prayed for you. I am so proud of you." He found himself standing in the middle of a vast, strange space. There were no shadows, no boundaries, just an endless field stretching far beyond his vision. The grass was lush and soft, almost velvet-like, swaying gently in the breeze. But the most striking thing was the sky. It wasn't the familiar night sky he had known, it was a universe filled with light. The stars sparkled like pearls, but they were so close that it felt as though he could reach out and touch them. This space was breathtaking in its beauty, something so surreal that Ethan couldn't quite make sense of it. He took a deep breath, inhaling the fresh, strangely pure air. The tranquility and peace surrounding him felt almost unreal, as if all his worries and pain had vanished. However, deep down, there was a sense of bewilderment. He didn't know where he was, nor could he understand why he was there. Everything around him was so different from anything he had ever known, and in that moment, he couldn't comprehend what he was facing. He glanced around, but there was no sign of anyone. Everything in this space felt eerily still, as though time had stopped. Ethan tried to rub his eyes, wondering if this was all a dream. But the realness of the sensation, the freshness of the air, everything around him made him believe that this couldn't possibly be a dream. Something strange was happening, and he felt a deep, sacred presence awaiting him just ahead. A distant figure began to approach, slowly and steadily. At first, it was just a shadow moving gently across the field, but as it drew closer, it began to glow brightly under the strange light of this space. It was a man, dressed in pure white, resembling a being from another world. The light around him was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. It radiated strongly and mysteriously, as if the man himself was made of light and energy, and every step he took left a trail of shimmering rays behind him. As the man came closer, Ethan felt a remarkable shift in the air around him. The space seemed to slow down, and a deep, sacred feeling began to wash over his soul. The strange emotions, the confusion, and the fear from earlier started to fade, replaced by an overwhelming sense of peace. There was something profound and dignified about this presence, something that felt beyond words, something beyond his understanding. The light surrounding the man seemed impervious to the dark space around him. It was an infinite source of energy, never fading, and even as he stood so close, Ethan could still feel a gentle warmth radiating from it. In that moment, the loneliness and despair that once weighed him down seemed to evaporate. Instead, he felt as if he was standing before something far greater, something sacred, as if this man held the answers to the questions his soul had long kept hidden. "Jesus," Ethan gasped, his voice trembling as he recognized the man standing before him. The entire space around him seemed to pause in that moment, as the light radiating from Jesus illuminated his very soul, dispelling all the doubt and fear that had once plagued him. It was a realization filled with emotion, as though he had found something he never knew he needed, a light guiding him through the darkness of life. Jesus gazed at Ethan with eyes full of love, as if he had known all the pain, all the exhaustion Ethan had endured. Those eyes weren't just full of forgiveness but were also filled with a deep understanding of everything Ethan had faced. He didn't need words to convey that, just a look was enough for Ethan to feel the peace and comfort that he brought. "You've found yourself in the darkness, but it is this light that will guide you," Jesus spoke, his voice resonating like the sound of the universe, warm and powerful. Every word he uttered felt like a fresh stream of water, washing away the wounds in Ethan's soul. His words weren't just comfort, but a promise and encouragement that Ethan was not alone, that there was still a grand purpose for his life, a path to follow. As Jesus spoke, the space around them seemed to shift. The stars, once mere flickers of light, now appeared to dance in harmony with the rhythm of his words, forming a divine ballet, a hymn of life and hope. Ethan felt the presence of love and peace envelop him, as if every cell in his body was being healed, reborn. Jesus led Ethan through another realm, a place he could never have imagined. The surroundings shifted quickly from the vast emptiness to a strange forest, seemingly born from the very light of the universe. The trees didn't rise from the ground but from shimmering beams of light, radiating a soft, mystical glow. The branches seemed pliant, bending as if reaching up to embrace the light, and their leaves glowed faintly, like tiny stars. Each step Ethan took echoed like the melodious strums of a harp, the sounds blending harmoniously with the serene space, forming a divine symphony of nature. Near-death experience after suicide, I was led to Jesus Christ and then this happened. Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. The story we're about to share is one filled with deep emotion and hope. It's the story of a woman who, after enduring unimaginable pain and feeling abandoned, reached a point where she tried to end her life with an overdose. However, in that moment of despair, she had a miraculous experience, seeing beings resembling Jesus, which brought her comfort and hope. This story will make you reflect on love, salvation, and the power of faith during the darkest moments of life. Stay with us as we uncover this inspiring journey. The protagonist of this story is Ethan, a 38-year-old man carrying a deep, unrelenting pain and a sense of despair that seems unbearable. Ethan's life has become a long string of losses and failures. Everything started to fall apart when his mother unexpectedly passed away in a car accident, leaving him alone in this world. Her death was not only an emotional loss but also a massive shock to his soul. After that, continuous struggles at work, failures in his romantic relationships, and prolonged loneliness pushed Ethan down a path with no way out. One late evening, as darkness enveloped the city and the silence in the air seemed like an invisible shroud, Ethan sat in his dimly lit room. Everything around him felt dull and insignificant, with only the distant streetlights casting faint glimmers through the window, forming lonely spots of light in the overwhelming dark. He gazed outside, feeling like he was standing in an empty void where no one cared, no one understood him anymore. The feelings of loneliness, failure, and hopelessness crashed over him like a massive wave, washing away any remaining hope or belief in life. "I can't take it anymore," Ethan thought to himself, his eyes closing, his back leaning against the window frame, a heaviness in his chest like a boulder. He had tried so hard to move forward, but now everything seemed futile. He felt like he was on the edge of total collapse. He had reached the point of making the decision to end it all. There was nothing left to salvage, no one left to share the pain. Life no longer had any meaning to him. He stood up, walked out of his room, moving slowly down the hallway, where only the sound of his footsteps echoed. His hands were cold, his heart was restless, but it was also a feeling of release. Finally, he stepped outside, where the cold night air rushed in, as if the world no longer had a place for him. In a moment of despair, Ethan looked up at the pitch-black sky, where the faint stars flickered like weak glimmers of light. He thought about his mother, about the people he loved, but those thoughts quickly faded away, overshadowed by the feeling that he no longer had the strength to continue. He turned and walked toward a decision that could not be undone. However, as he stepped outside, a gentle breeze brushed past Ethan, making him feel as though someone was watching him. This strange sensation sent a shiver down his spine, but he couldn't understand why. The air around him suddenly grew cold, different from before. Then, without warning, a brilliant beam of light enveloped him. This light was unlike anything he had ever seen. It wasn't the streetlights or the soft glow of the moon. It was a pure, dazzling light, sparkling and powerful, as if the universe itself was opening up before him. Before he could react, Ethan's body was pulled through space by an invisible force. He could see nothing but the blinding light and vague, blurry shapes around him. Everything seemed to vanish into a hazy realm, and he felt as though he no longer existed in this world. His head spun, and a sense of disorientation overtook his mind, but he couldn't stop it. All sense of self seemed to fade away, leaving only a drifting sensation through an endless space. In that moment, all his pain, all his despair seemed to vanish. Only a strange and incomprehensible feeling remained, as if some powerful force was guiding him to a place not of this world. He was no longer Ethan, no longer the man burdened with sorrow, loneliness, and the pains that had pushed him to the brink of life and passing. He was only a soul, floating in an indescribable space. "What is happening to me?" he wondered in his dazed state, but the question no longer seemed important. Everything sank into silence, and the light gradually consumed him in a strange sense of peace. When Ethan opened his eyes, he realized he was no longer on the ground. Everything around him was so different, so unbelievable, that he could hardly believe it. He couldn't remember when he had left his room, couldn't recall how he ended up here, but what he saw made his heart race with a mix of astonishment and fear.